to Brisbane Festival. This was the front cover. Are we able to? I'm flicking through. Roll with the punches. That's what we're doing now. I will try and keep going back to this front slide, which is boldly Brisbane. I'm not sure. Is there someone who can help with this technology, or?
This gentleman here with the blue.
Let's just leave it there.
Slideshow from current.
Okay, here we go. So, it's looking again.
Okay. It's on auto scroll.
You know what? Let's just go with this. I'm going to play the clip because it wants to play it for you. So let's just do that. This is what I just did, ladies and gentlemen, over the past month. Here we go. That's what 2020. Let it roll. So this is who we're sponsored by. This is the final clip. I think it's probably best to just stop it because I don't want it to keep flicking through. That would be great. Okay, so that was Brisbane Festival, and here we go again. It's so good we want to see it again. Encore. Okay, so I've given you the grand reveal. This is what we don't want to do in the arts ever. We want to build it right up and then give you the grand reveal, but I'll go in reverse and I'll just come back to this. So, my industry operates in some ways very different to a lot of your... Okay. No, just stop it entirely.
Got it.
Let's just
leave it. Just leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Take 20. So what I was saying was my industry works very differently. We usually have rehearsals and it's very schmick. This is not a reflection of the way I usually roll. But nonetheless, we have courage and we're fearless and we keep going, which could not be relevant to everything that we are here today for every industry that we're in. So I've been asked today to speak to you about building your business resilience with a focus on amplifying your business resilience, particularly during times of adversity, engaging and nurturing stakeholders, and the importance of strong leadership. But I'm going to do that by telling you the story behind the clip of what you just saw. And I hope that this story of making a new Brisbane Festival in the wake of the hit of COVID-19 in March 2020 provides some insights into my approaches regarding all of the above. So, in March 2020, the Mayor of Rome, Virginia Raggi, extended the most unusual invitation to the citizens of Rome. She encouraged them to open their windows or step out onto their balconies for daily sing-alongs. Italy was in total lockdown, 60 million people forced to stay in their homes. Virginia's invitation for spontaneous singing, musical performances and dancing has been a source of both inspiration and comfort to me over the past 8 months. This year's Brisbane Festival was repeatedly recrafted and reimagined with the ever-evolving restrictions. And what those people of Rome were putting out on their balconies was a term andrà tutto bene, which actually means that everything will be all right, because it will be. This was hung from Virginia's balcony overlooking the Roman Forum and became a fitting mantra for this year's Brisbane Festival, which just took place in September. When the Australian federal government placed strict restrictions on mass gatherings back in March, the reality of COVID, I don't need to tell you all, but it did feel like a massive tsunami that was coming faster than any of us knew how to respond to. 2020 has been the most tumultuous year of our lives, from drought, fires, floods, the global pandemic, and a social unrest that has brought to the forefront many injustices that have been swept under the carpet for too long, demanding we pause and we reflect. So the question begged, how do we make a festival for these times? The month of March was a seminal one, and one that I doubt any of us will ever forget. International borders closed. Social distancing was the most used phrase, along with pivot and isolation. And yes, this threw some pretty big challenges for myself and my team and my chair, who's here today, Alison Smith, in that moment. However, one thing remained absolutely resolute, and that was our commitment to Brisbane. For my inaugural year as the Artistic Director of Brisbane Festival, Brisbane was always going to be the star of the show. We are blessed with an abundance of incredible luminaries in this city and homegrown artistic talents. And the impact on this community at the hands of COVID-19 has been absolutely devastating for both artists and venues. In reimagining this year's festival, rather than focus on all of the things that we could not do, we chose to channel our energy into everything that we could. While COVID-19 restrictions shut down almost every arts festival, not only in Australia but globally, Brisbane Festival found a way to go on, and it was not online. It was live and real, and it was in every single suburb of this city. Before I go on, I feel like telling you a little bit about Brisbane Festival in a very quick rundown would be a good thing to do, because whilst we think everybody knows what we do in the arts, everybody lives and breathes it, they don't. We need to talk to people about what we do. So Brisbane Festival emerged from the Warana Festival, which began in 1961. Warana's theme was entertainment for the people, by the people. It was a much-loved festival, but the city had aspirations for something more sophisticated after the 1988 Expo. By the mid-1990s, it was clear that the city needed a new approach. In 1996, the Queensland Government and the Brisbane City Council created Brisbane Festival as a biennial arts festival to foster the arts in this city. At around the same time, in 1998, River Festival was created by the Brisbane City Council, and that's where Riverfire emerged. And in 2009, Brisbane Festival and the River Festival combined through a joint partnership with the Queensland Government and the Brisbane City Council, and we became an annual event. We are the youngest of all of the festivals in this country by about a decade, and we are now the biggest cultural event to happen in this state. So there was a slide that was going to tell you about all the key stats, and maybe, I'll just quickly whip through them, but I guess what's really important is that it didn't go backwards. It didn't become the festival that had the asterisk next to it. I heard that, I'm going to show that my vulnerability, I don't know anything about AFL at all. However, I've heard that the Brisbane Lions were going to have an asterisk next to it because it's 2020. And it's like the disclaimer that says it actually didn't really happen this year, so don't worry about it anyway, whether it's good or bad performance. And that is not what I wanted this to be. It's got nothing to do with the year. There's no asterisk after Brisbane Festival 2020. It's Brisbane Festival 2020, and that is what we're really proud of. We made 28 new works. We did 120 productions, 573 performances, 101 of those were free. We went to 244 locations across 190 suburbs of Brisbane, and we discovered that Brisbane is the biggest city council in this country. Once I had already told the council we would go to every single council, but we did it. And we employed 1,002 artists and arts workers from this state, which is the biggest number of employment for locals that this festival has ever generated. We created large Gouldian finch birds for those that saw them perched across the city. We lit up the night sky with lasers every Friday and Saturday night, trying not to encourage mass gatherings, but really we wanted people to see them in some way. We decided to serenade the suburbs, 190 of them, and that was very much inspired by Rome. And we had the weirdest anti-marketing campaign you could ever imagine, where you had to secretly sort of find out about things, because if too many people came, we would be in trouble. But if not enough people came, I would turn up and be completely devastated, and so would those artists. So we balanced this very fine line of just sharing enough and hoping that grand gestures like lasers and birds would give people just enough to know that there was something really awesome happening. We were also responsible for opening every arts venue in this city, including QPAC, with our season of Leviathan. So, that was Brisbane Festival 2020, and in preparing for today I was reminded of a quote that particularly resonates for me more than ever. The most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century will not occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. And that's from a futurist called John Naisbitt. This speaks volumes to me as it cuts right to the heart of the work that I do and the power of a festival and even broader creativity. And if I may be so bold without knowing any of you, except for a couple, I suspect that humanity has a very big part of what you all do, and hopefully that resonates. The great power of a festival and its ability to be responsive, inclusive, immersive and innovative. A great city should know how to turn itself on and be the most important and exciting time for that community, and that's what we hope to do at Brisbane Festival. Another great quote that I often look to for inspiration is, art should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. In September 2020, we delivered a festival against all the odds. It was live, it was local, and it was bursting with love, joy and hope, and hopefully everything that everybody was looking for at that time. And it was boldly Brisbane. We were incredibly proud to be Brisbane, and we were really, really proud to be the one that did actually go ahead this year. So it's a pretty great story for Queensland. The perfect antidote for our times. I've talked about the fact that we were one of very few to go ahead globally, and we had an extraordinary amount of PR that came from that. And we often go, well, nothing else was happening, but there was so many great things to talk about. And as a proud Queenslander, it was nice to be able to fly the flag for our state for all of the right reasons, particularly when it came to the arts. We employed more artists than ever before, and we had a critical mass across the entire city. Through physical distancing and numerous other measures, it was possible to be a triumphant success. In a year that will go down in the history books, we delivered. But we were able to do this because we had courage, we were fearless, we amplified the heart of our business, our mission, our vision, and we brought the people of Brisbane together at a time of adversity. We engaged and nurtured relationships with our stakeholders, and this was absolutely critical. With Alison, our chair, and my colleague CEO, Charlie Cush, we had numerous meetings. We had to convince politicians. We had to convince our board. We had to convince our corporate sponsors, our donors. We had to work really, really closely with Queensland Health and the Chief Health Officer and show them that we knew what we were doing. It was a massive risk. And as I said to Richard when I met you earlier today, it was the biggest risk that I've ever taken in my entire career. Because what if it didn't work? What if we made people sick? But we kept coming back to the why. We went in with a plan, we listened and we responded, we had positivity and we had a vision. We engaged their expertise and we tried to capture their imaginations. We nurtured these relationships as it was critical to our success and it worked. And we could not have done this alone. It was an absolute team effort and everybody needed to be singing from the same hymn sheet. We raised more money than ever before in that short period of time from philanthropic donors, and we retained over $1 million worth of cash sponsorship. This year certainly put me through my paces as the leader of the Brisbane Festival, as the artistic leader of the Brisbane Festival. Leading us through such a precarious time needed clarity, it needed a vision, and it needed strength. It needed a steady board and somebody that we could talk to at all times, which we had with Alison. And we had to really dig deep and keep coming back to what I said before, the why. Why? Because our city needed us more than ever before. Because people ultimately need hope. Because people need something to look forward to. Because we can create employment. And because we knew how to do it. And now we needed to show our importance, our relevance, and that we were here as a leader in our community. One of the great discoveries of COVID-19 is that it seems to really prey on our humanity. And this was our great power as well as our great weapon against COVID. In 2021, I hope that we will break new ground once again, with an underbelly of uncertainty in our world that remains completely unpredictable and tumultuous. We believe we will come back out and come up with something new, and who knows what the world's going to throw us next year, but we will be ready for it. And just to end on this, and politicians aside, and this is definitely from an American perspective, no generation ever knows what history will ask of it. All we can ever know is whether we will be ready at that moment when it arrives. And now, history has delivered to us one of the most difficult moments America has ever faced, but I would say the world, at least the Western world, 4 historic crises at once. Perfect storm. The worst pandemic in over 100 years, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the most compelling call for racial justice since the 1960s, and undeniable realities of accelerating threats of climate change. So the question for us is really quite simple. Are we ready? Thank you very much. Thank you for being patient with me through this.
Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? Can anybody go to the Brisbane Festival? Question, sir.
Not sure if you have the answer, but you said you anti-marketed. So how did you do that? That would be a very useful skill for me as a service business to be able to have that, not too many, but have enough. So how did you do that?
Yeah, there was a sense of mystery about it. I guess we could rely on the fact that perhaps whilst not that many hands went up about the Brisbane Festival, hopefully a lot of people knew about the Brisbane Festival. And so we could rely on the strength. And then we tried to just build this sense of curiosity. How do we find out about where the Street Serenades is? We leaked out just enough information to the right people. We had a social media following where we would release certain information at certain times. In the end, actually, with the health restrictions, we could have probably told everybody, just so long as we contact traced everybody and made sure we had physical distancing. But, for my job and for Alison's job, we could not put a foot wrong. It was that serious. Queensland Health followed us everywhere. So it was just a careful balancing act. And I also think that there was something really great about that real grassroots and finding out if you happen to stumble on something. And the other wonderful thing that we discovered was we would go into these kind of high traffic locations and the music would draw people out. There would suddenly become this crowd of people gathering and listening. And then unfortunately it was time for us to move on. But that was probably the worst and hardest moment in our marketing department's journey. But the fact that it worked is also a great success.
Next question, sir.
Could you give us a bit of rundown on how you manage the paranoia bureaucracy at Queensland? What we saw on the press was that the big panic going on down there. How did you manage that to convince them to allow you to effectively sing in the streets?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I remember there was this really short period of time where we basically needed to firstly get permission from our minister and the Lord Mayor. And in the meeting with the Arts Minister, which Alison and myself and my colleague participated in, which was on the phone, we couldn't even see her face, she was just going, "This is amazing. You're the first people to come to me with a solution, but you need to talk to the Chief Health Officer." So we got to speak to the Deputy Chief Health Officer, and he was really inspired and he was really engaged, and he just said, "I think we need this right now. Can you do it right now?" And we said, "Well, no, we can't." But it was just building that trust with him, and I think at the end of the day, he's a human who wanted to see things continue as well. And we just kept working through it, and I have to give full credit to my team and colleagues who wrote the COVID safe plans and then rewrote them and rewrote them and rewrote them and rewrote them and resubmitted them, and then they'd say we need it back in the next 24 hours, and we'd just do it because we had to do it and we wanted to do it. And then the Chief Health Officer came to our official opening. We didn't have any time for a dress rehearsal, and she arrives at our first big public event, and she could see we had all the social distancing in place and everything absolutely to a T. We did everything we said we would do, and she was completely relaxed and had a wonderful time. So we just had to build trust, and we just could not deviate from the plan at any moment.
Clearly worked because didn't get any cases.
Wonderful.
Every day we would be looking. And then the 2 weeks after, that was actually the party day. 2 weeks after the 20th of September, that was the moment really where the champagne was flowing. Yeah, happy Champagne Day today. But yeah, it was really stressful because I was the one that particularly wouldn't take no for an answer. But then if I had to face my board or the community that we live in, that we had done anything that made anyone sick, I guess, I don't know, I just knew it would be okay. Completely be wrong. I'd be run out of town. Yeah.
Next question.
So you're saying the Brisbane Festival and River Fire sort of hand in hand, but River Fire never went ahead.
First time in 20 odd years.
Yeah, and so my question is, do you see us having fireworks at New Year's Eve?
Oh, I can't answer that question because we
Different
don't
committee.
do it, sorry. That's Brisbane City Council.
Right.
We're working towards River Fire being part of Brisbane Festival again next year. So that's all I can tell you really. I'm sure we'll find a way to do it.
So,
Knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently next year?
Oh, definitely. For next year, absolutely. I'm determined to get people dancing again, not actually in a square, but dancing.
Can you describe how you did that?
So we did an event called the Socially Distanced Dance Club where we set up squares which was all prescribed by a health officer, and you had to stay in that square. But people loved it, and it just kept turning over and over, and more people kept coming and coming all the time. But it would be great to have a big gig. I mean, we know how to do sports events in stadiums, so maybe we could bring a mega music star to Brisbane next year, and we could be the first ones to do that. There's so many things that I think we can do differently.
next question.
Sorry. Instead of what could you do differently? I mean, there was obviously some things that you did for the very first time. What would carry on to next year and the year after?
Yeah, I think that's the question that we're all asking ourselves at the moment, actually. I know that the Lord Mayor and our Arts Minister, whether she stays our Arts Minister or not, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks, but they both fell in love with the Street Serenades project. So I think that we would like to keep it, but doing 190 concerts for free is a really expensive exercise. But we really want to do that project, and if we can actually tell people where we're going to be, it would be incredibly rich and gorgeous. So that's certainly something we want to do. Yeah, look, we'll have another big thing that people will be able to visually know that the Brisbane Festival's on, but I need to make sure that my chair's happy with the rest of my plans before I do a grand reveal.
Or not, just do it.
Yeah.
Apologise later.
You're announcing it, you're almost making.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
That's right.
yeah.
Next question.
Oh, not a question, but for
Yeah,
what it's
please.
worth, I love the birds.
Yes. They're flying north. They're going up to Townsville and to Mackay and up west, hopefully. So, yeah.
Any final questions? Yep, sir.
What did you learn?
About myself.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that everything I said, like street serenades and the birds, there was a lot of people that couldn't see it, didn't believe that it would work, and didn't think that there would be value in it, that we couldn't translate it to bringing in money for the company. Just because we have public funding, we also rely heavily on the corporate dollar. We couldn't bring in anywhere near the kind of box office dollars that we've had before. But what actually I learned that, no, I have to trust my instinct that this was the right thing to do. But actually, we've also learned that there was a lot of corporate partners now that really want to be part of that project, because you're going directly to every single kind of community in the city. So I think just trusting your instinct and having a real clarity of vision, and not wavering from that when sometimes you feel like, oh, this is not the right thing to do, just keep.
Keep going, very powerful. Isn't it? Any further questions? Ladies and gentlemen, Louise Bezzina.